Ahead in our next half hour here on News 13, there's been some gray area on who is banned from the U.S. and why in the travel ban. We break down what the president's executive order means. Then President Donald Trump's executive order suspending immigration from certain nations has brought confusion and protests. I go in depth with an expert to break it all down. President Trump's executive order suspending immigration from certain Muslim-majority nations into the United States has brought confusion, protest, and disruption to American airports and ports. Going in depth with us to answer some of the questions raised by the order is immigration attorney Nayef Mubarak. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
To say confusion is not even a strong enough word to really, what's going on. I don't think people understand. First off, do you have clients who have been impacted by this order, and what advice do you give them?
I mean, absolutely. Confusion and maybe even chaotic at times it's been. I had a few clients that were held for over 8 hours on Sunday, and I was at the airport communicating with the GOA authority, communicating with the family members on the other side, attempting to facilitate the release of these individuals who had all the proper documents to enter the United States. Their son was an American citizen, but thankfully, given the court orders from New York and Massachusetts staying the executive order, they were able to enter just after waiting 8 or 9 hours in isolation.
And they were just coming to visit?
They are permanent residents.
Okay.
They will be once they entered. So their son is an American citizen. He petitioned for them. So they're actually going to now be lawful residents of the United States. So it's their right to be here.
What was their impression about this? They were going to be American citizens, but yet they were held up.
I think the parents who were actually held for several hours were exhausted and just overwhelmed. They didn't have much to say when they were released, but the son was very frustrated. As an American, he believes he had certain rights, and he pays taxes, and it's his right to bring his family here. So he felt he was being sort of injusticed by this act and holding his parents.
Help us to understand your understanding of the order and its intent. They say it's temporary, 90 days. What's your understanding of it?
So to me, the way the order is written, it's so broad. I think that's why it created so much confusion. It covers an array of topics. It discusses refugees and it discusses visa holders, both immigrant and non-immigrant. So as far as refugees, it's saying they're putting a complete hold on Syrian refugees for 120 days, except for the minority of religions, which means Christians, essentially. So if you're not Muslim, then your application will continue to be processed. As far as visas is concerned, the hold is for 90 days, and they're kind of going to reanalyze the systems at the Department of State, the consulates, and whether or not these 7 countries are providing information that is necessary to the U.S. government. So they could expand the list. They could make it shorter. I mean, really, we don't know what's going to happen with this. So
doesn't the president have wide latitude concerning immigration and who can be admitted to this country?
He has latitude as far as how the how ICE, this enforcement branch, should enforce the laws and creating certain discretionary authorities. However, what a lot of legal scholars are saying is that this is far too broad and is overstepping his executive branch power and actually creating new laws and discriminating certain countries.
Is he going against the Constitution?
Well, the Constitution, as far as due process, is the argument that's saying that's what he's violating, because people have legal authority, legal permission to come, and by denying them access is, in fact, violating these individuals' due process rights, specifically American citizens who have applied for their family members, spouses, and parents. We are affecting their due process, would essentially be the argument violating the Constitution.
Well, do you think the protests at Orlando International Airport and other airports around the country will have an impact on the administration? I mean, it was quick. I mean, around the country, immediately the protests started in large numbers.
Absolutely. I think the protests brought a lot of necessary attention, and it showed the frustration of the people. And for judges who are reading these lawsuits, I mean, they cannot not be affected by the protests that are happening in large numbers. The GOA authority at Orlando Airport seemed frustrated and overwhelmed with the protests. People want to protect our right to free speech. They need to protect the airport's security. It's just a lot going on, so many moving pieces by this sweeping order, and it kind of created a very chaotic atmosphere over the weekend.
Will there be some sort of, how will this end?
Well, it looks like there's going to be more and more lawsuits being filed against President Trump for the executive order. And so we will see, similarly to what happened to President Obama about his DAPA executive order, whether or not the Supreme Court or the district courts will deem that his order was in fact constitution and within his powers. So I think that's what is going to continue to happen. The White House already issued statements trying to offer clarity as far as no legal permanent residents. We want them to come in. They have green cards. It's their right to come in, but they are subject to inspection and case-by-case determination by the CBP agents.
And one quick question. Let's go to sports for a minute. We have a lot of sports figures that come from other countries, and some of them are listed. So if they go home, can they get back?
Right. I mean, this is absolutely right. Performers, there's individuals who are arriving to the United States for the Oscars that were concerned they were not going to be allowed to enter. As the language is written in his executive order, if you're from one of these countries, regardless of your visa, you are not allowed to be admitted at this time.
So if you leave, you risk you may not be able to come back.
I am being very cautious with my clients. I'm warning, please, if you are from one of these 7 countries, speak to an immigration attorney prior to traveling. It's critical. We don't want to put yourself in a worse situation if it can be avoided.
All right, Nayef Mubarak, we will keep an eye on this and see what happens.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.